a couple of minutes. Hi to those joining. Hey, Andres. Welcome to the session today. Cambridge, hey. You should try to see where in the world people are coming in from. We get a lot, like I said, we get a lot in from the UK at the moment. So, are you also in London at the moment, or where are you? Yeah,
really London.
Very London.
What is raining now? Good.
Yeah. Hey. Hey, Oliver. Hey, Simon. Right. While we get a few more people in and just give you a couple of seconds, a couple more minutes to join. I'm trying to think if I have any crucial admin to share with you all today. I think by this week it's kind of just business as usual. As from Lagos, hi Nyaku. We've always, as ever, recording this session will be recorded, and you'll be able to catch up on the recording once it gets added on Friday. So over the weekend is usually the best time to start looking for the recordings. If there's anything you've missed, or just if you want to kind of watch over and relearn, and equally if you've missed anything from last week, that should all be up now, and it's on Notion, which has been shared in the Slack channel. If you did register to be matched with a mentor, you should now have received an introduction. And I've had a couple of emails that have been from a few people who had to switch over and whatever, and that's all being addressed this week. But yeah, and if you have any questions on mentorship, we're on it. Hopefully should all be resolved pretty soon. Pitch decks, we've had a couple of questions about. Yes, pitch decks will get shared to the Notion, and they'll be on the kind of event card of the each masterclass alongside the recordings. If we are able to share, sometimes we're not actually able to share the pitch deck separately to the recordings. So apologies for that, but anything that can be shared will be. Same with sort of ways to get hold of people, that will all be on there as well. And I think that might be it. As we said, there's only 2 sessions this week, today and tomorrow. We will let you know as soon as we get other sessions rearranged. So apologies for the last minute change there. Yeah, we'll update you as soon as we hear from our speakers about what they can attend. I think that's it. I know we have a hard stop at 6:30 today. So without further ado, I'm going to encourage you all to hand over to Veronica, and actually I'll let you kind of explain everything else that we discussed.
Great. Thanks very much, Julia. Really lovely to meet you all. It's a shame I don't get to see your beautiful faces as we have a webinar today, but really excited to have so many of you join from all these different countries and locations. I myself am based in the UK. It's currently raining outside, so as usual. So my name is Veronica. I'm an associate partner at Atla UK, which is an early stage fund. I work for the UK fund specifically, but we have locations in 14 countries worldwide. And we invest at a very, very early stage, pre-seed and seed stage. So we're usually typically the first institutional investor. Very much sector agnostic, so we invest in all sorts of different business models and all sorts of different sectors, as we believe that there's enough problems to solve in the world. And my main focus is obviously on the investment side. So I work with a large number of entrepreneurs from all walks of life at the very beginning of their entrepreneurial journey. And for Atla specifically, I spend a lot of my time with the portfolio on helping them with the fundraising bit, on how to think about their equity story, how to pitch themselves effectively to future investors. So, and that's what we're going to be talking about today, about how to think about reviewing pitch decks. If you have any questions at all throughout, don't hesitate to put it in the chat or the Q&A, and I'll try and answer those as we go. And if there's any unanswered questions at the end, then we can go through those as well. Any questions before we start? No? In that case, I will just share my screen. Let's see. And then hopefully you guys can all see that. So we're going to be, I'm going to try and keep it as interactive as possible. So please do reply in the chat as we go, and then hopefully it will be very useful to all of you. So before we even start about how to think about reviewing pitch decks, I just want to actually start with the definition, because there's a lot of misconceptions about what a deck is for. There's so many different types of decks. So just want to maybe get some insights from you guys of what you think a pitch deck is, sort of definition. No, we're being very shy at the beginning. So basically it's a visual story of your business. It's basically there to help structure the conversation with your investors. And yeah, exactly. It's basically a means for the founding team to represent their company. So VCs, and as you see, sort of a lot of demo days online, a lot of pitching competitions. Investors do get a lot of hate for spending way too much time on pitch decks and putting way too much emphasis on pitch decks. And I get this from founders all the time. Or why are you making us waste our time on writing this deck? What I'm supposed to be doing is building a business. Yes, their main job is to build a business, but you have to find a way to tell your story to others. Aid your employees to get them on board, to get excited to join your journey. Your potential customers, it's all about telling your story. Why would they even be interested in such an unknown quantity? You're only just starting out, no one knows anything about you. Why would they buy into your product? But I guess what we're going to be talking about today specifically is how you as an investor should look at a deck. Because the primary purpose of a pitch deck for investors is really to help me understand what your story is, how you got to work on your company. And that's where it gives an opportunity for the founders to really structure the conversation and to help describe the business in a very succinct way. And as I said, the primary purpose is really not to get money, contrary to what a lot of founders think. Oh, I'll send the pitch deck and then therefore I will just raise money straight away. It's not quite how it works. You really need to build a relationship over a sort of long period of time. And obviously depending on when you see a deck, whether it's at the very beginning where you haven't met the founders, whether it's later on, really what it's designed to do is not to go from, hey, nice to meet you, to here's the money that you need. It's really just to spark interest. All I need from a deck, or you need as a VC from a deck, is to have the aha moment of, oh, this looks interesting, I want to follow up. And it really is, sorry, there's a siren in the background. It's really just to get the entrepreneur to the next stage, whatever it may be. If it's a cold call and I just get a deck landing on my desk and I know nothing about this, then it's really just designed for me to want to have a follow-up conversation. If you've already had that follow-up conversation, the next stage might be, oh, it's an interesting enough deck that I want to pass it on to my partners to have a further look. It's important for the founders to have that mindset of, it's not a transaction as such, it's a relationship building tool. And so therefore the real purpose should be to get me excited about wanting to follow up. And it's not supposed to give me all the answers. I will have a lot of questions afterwards, but that's precisely the point. I want to have the right kind of questions that will make me want to pick up the phone and spend more time with you. So all that is just to get me excited and want to spend more time with you. Can anyone sort of give me a rough estimate of how much investors actually do spend on reviewing a deck on average? And then we can talk about the should, sort of roughly how much, if I get a deck in my inbox, how much time am I gonna spend just roughly going through it? I've got 15 minutes, I've got 30 seconds, 20 minutes, 2 minutes, 5 minutes. All of those could be valid. 1 minute, 3 minutes. Yeah, I can see lots of varied answers, but I think you guys are right in that actually you really don't spend a lot of time at all. There's been some studies done, and apparently on average it's about 3 minutes 44 seconds, so less than 4 minutes, which is not a long time at all. If you think about it, most VCs will get thousands of decks running in a day on their desks through various means, warm introductions, some random person finding your email, getting a random deck that you know nothing about, and then obviously anything in between. And given how many days you work in a year, that means that you end up looking through a lot of decks every week. And that's obviously on top of everything else that you're doing. So you're not going to spend a lot of time looking through it. And so you really, as an entrepreneur, you really need to find a way to grab my attention so that, again, I want to spend looking through it. In terms of how you should review it and how much time you should spend on reviewing a pitch deck, there is no such thing as should, really. It's what typically most people do is you just sort of flick through it. And so if the deck survives the flick test, then I will actually have a deeper look. But it's really, I just sort of have a quick flick through, see if it sounds interesting, see if it even matches what I'm interested in, because often people don't even sort of, check whether I can invest in the kind of company that they are proposing. And so you spend not very long at all flicking through, and then if it merits a deeper look, then you probably spend what some of you mentioned, sort of an hour or even more, just going through things in more depth, doing a bit of background research, checking that whatever it is that that the entrepreneur is telling you is actually true, checking through competition, all sorts of different things. But in reality, the initial deck is very swift. And then how do you know that, because you don't actually spend a lot of time looking through a deck initially, how do you know that it's good? Like how do you even know that I should spend more time on it? What do you guys think? I'm just looking at the answers on my other screen, not staring into space. So any ideas on like, how do you even judge that it's good? I've got, I don't know, 2 minutes. Problem and solution is clear. Yeah, that's a good one. If you evaluate the team expertise, yeah, team very important. What else? What makes it good? That there's an amount asked for the geography sector. Yeah, that there's some traction. So Paul is saying, yeah, exactly. Oh, yeah, clarity of idea, exactly. All of those are very an addressable market is valid. All of those ideas are good. It's all of those things really. It's a combination of lots of different things. But ultimately, the way I like to think about it is that a good deck doesn't actually need the entrepreneur in the room with me to explain it, because more often than not, you don't get the benefit of the voiceover. So often you just have a deck without much context, and you need to sort of make a judgment call. Does it go in the yes pile, maybe pile, no pile? Where should it go? And so if I actually, yes, I will have questions no matter which pile it goes into, but if I get the basic concepts, I don't actually need the entrepreneur to explain it to me. All I'm going to have is follow-up questions and questions to clarify certain points. But I will immediately get okay, I get exactly what these guys are working on, and I see that it makes sense. So it's just that clarity of I want to have a follow-up, and I don't need the basics explained because the basics are there. And I guess what I want to highlight with that is that it's never really about a deck in isolation or a slide in isolation. Whenever you think about reviewing pitch decks or investing in a company, you never invest based on the pitch deck. It's all about understanding what that real story is, what's behind the deck. So the deck is just a reflection. It's just a summary of what it is that you're working on, how you got there, what your plans are. it's helping me understand what your dream is and whether I can be of use to make that into reality. But it's never really about a deck specifically or a slide. You have to look at it more holistically. So the deck and the slides is just part of the sort of big investment piece, but it's really there just to help me understand what the real story is. And then I guess because it's helpful to think about sort of key takeaways always, because we have such a short attention span. If you think about sort of the 3 things that you'd want to take away from a pitch as an investor, what would you say would be sort of top 3 things that you'd really want to understand from an initial pitch? Just 3 most important things that you'd want clarity on without having that benefit of a voiceover, having an entrepreneur next to you explaining it to you. What would be the 3 key things that you would look at to make that judgment call of whether or not it's worth taking a deeper look? Numbers, yeah. Understanding the product, absolutely. The problem they're working on, yeah. And then I have business model, target market, commercialization. Yeah, those could be really useful too. Whether or not it fits with the fund thesis, yes, absolutely. The team, yeah. All of those, very good ideas, guys. All of those could be valid, but I guess if I had to pick, and a lot of this is subjective, but if I had to pick 3 things, I want to understand 3 big things from a pitch. What is the problem? What is the solution? And why this team? There's a lot of other things that you need to understand, right? Why now, how big the opportunity is. But if I don't have these 3 basic things, I'm probably not even going to look at the rest. Or I'm going to look at the rest with a sort of negative standing already. So what is the problem? First and foremost, it sounds so simple, because ultimately what the startup is all about is solving a problem. And so the most important thing that an entrepreneur needs to do, and an investor deck, is explain what problem they're trying to actually solve. Sometimes they are trying to solve a problem that doesn't actually exist, but what I really need to know is this actually worth solving? Is this a painful enough problem? Is it something that enough people experience? Is it actually something that's needed? Urgent? Is it a problem that it's going to be growing? Is it something that is unavoidable, that I desperately need solving right now because it's part of my journey and I hack together lots of different things to solve it already because it's something that I just desperately need to solve? If all of those elements are there, then maybe you're onto something. Once I have a clear understanding of, okay, what problem you're specifically going after and how big that problem is, and I get a sense of just how painful that is felt by the users, then I need a basic understanding of what your proposed solution is. Is it something that I desperately want to get my hands on right away because I just really need this problem solved? Or is it something that will just make me go, well, it's nice, but great. And then what? So is it sort of a vitamin versus a painkiller? Is it gonna provide a killer solution that's gonna revolutionize my life as a consumer? Or is it something that is a nice to have and something that I could actually do without? I might pay for it, but actually if I can avoid not paying for it, then I won't. And again, I always like to think in fees. What are the sort of the key features of this solution that is going to help me understand how you're going about problem? Someone is asking whether I'm going through the slides. I am. Can you guys not see the slides? No one is actually pointing this out to me. Sorry about this. I was going through the slides, but I don't know whether, didn't realize you didn't see it. Can you guys see this now? No.
We can see it in non-present form.
Okay, then that's the other screen. And what about now? Yes, you can.
Yeah.
Okay. And so, do you guys see now the, no?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, now it works. Okay. Let me just fix this. Oh no, never mind. So yeah, I was going through thanks for pointing it out. Who is thank you very much for pointing it out, Simon. Thank you. Yes. So basically, number 2 is this how are you going to be able to solve this problem? And then thirdly, why is this team the relevant one to be solving this particular problem? Again, something that a lot of people often understand, but I want to understand why you think it's a problem, why you think you're the right team to be solving it. So yeah, those would be my sort of 3 key things. There's obviously a lot of other things that I would want to understand, but these would be the sort of key things I'd want to understand. And I guess sort of looking at it more holistically, when I look at a deck, I want to see just overall, I want to understand whether it actually, all of it makes sense. I guess when you're an entrepreneur, you're working on this idea and you're so in it, it's difficult sometimes for them to really appreciate whether someone else can understand what they actually mean and what's in their head. So does it actually make sense to me? Can I actually see the potential that the entrepreneur can see? But I guess first and foremost, can I as an investor add value here? Because even if all the other elements are there, even if it makes a lot of sense, even if I can see the potential, if ultimately I don't think I am the right investor for it, then I'll probably give them some good positive feedback, but decline the opportunity if I don't think I'm the right person to look at this opportunity. So it's something to always bear in mind, even if all the elements are there, is it the right opportunity for you and for your fund? I guess in terms of what needs to go in the pitch deck, and therefore I don't want to spend too much time on describing what a perfect pitch deck looks like, because I don't think there is one. There's a lot of information on this online, and I guess entrepreneurs often fall into the trap of researching this for hours and hours and going through lots of examples of decks that made it. Examples of decks that got a lot of funding, and it can be useful, but in reality there's no one size fits all approach. There's if you ask 3 different investors, they will give you 3 different ideas around what makes a good deck for them, but I think there are some commonalities that should go in a deck, and sort of some things that should be covered in a good deck, because I as an investor and you as a VC will want to see in the deck so that you understand what this opportunity is all about. And those would be in no particular order, sort of this list that I put on this slide, and I will go through it in a minute. But I guess what I would say is that depending on what level of what stage of funding you're looking at, some of these will be more or less relevant. If you're looking at a super early stage deck, which is just 2 or 3 founders, an idea, they don't really have anything yet, they're only just starting, then obviously traction will be minimal. They won't have anything, they won't have any sort of financial metrics to go through because they haven't really done much, and therefore I will look at some other things that I can already judge this opportunity on, and therefore I will spend more time trying to really understand the problem and the value proposition. But then on the flip side, if it's a later stage investment that has been operational for a number of years, then I will look at the numbers a bit more. I will look at whether customers really like this product, whether there's good reviews, whether the numbers actually represent sort of good traction, good amount of whether people actually buy this product, whether this company is actually making any money. So the level of importance of all of these different things will be different, but I guess by and large, you can generalize that no matter what stage of funding you're looking at, no matter what stage VC you're working for, these are the kind of things that you would really want to understand. So problem statement, which is something that we mentioned already. So is there a crisp problem statement that will make me understand immediately what problem they're solving, what the value proposition is? Okay, this is the problem and that's how we're solving it, and what the proposed solution is. I will want to have some sort of a sense of, is this something that's defensible? Is this just something that someone can copy very easily? or is there something within the team, or is there some sort of know-how within the team that means that this is something that can be protected for a while and therefore won't be wiped out by another competitor immediately. Once I understand all of those, it's okay, I have a problem that I'm solving with this particular solution. How do I actually put it in the hands of customers? What's your go-to-market strategy? Competition, something that people always trip over and say, oh, I'm so novel, I'm creating something so revolutionary that I don't have any competition. And that's when you know that they haven't really done their research. Everyone has competition. Even if you're working on something that is very novel, there's going to be an established way of doing things. And so you will have some sort of competition. So that's my pet hate. If someone tells me they don't have competition, they don't stand the chance. Market opportunity, I will touch on that in a minute, but I want to understand, is there a big enough opportunity here? Is this a big enough market? Even if it's a problem, even if you have a great solution for it, if there's not a big enough opportunity, then it might not be so interesting to look at. Obviously, even once I've understood all of that, how I want to know how you're going to make money. Obviously not initially, and it might take a while. You might need to raise a bit of funding for you to get there, but I will still want to understand how you think about making money eventually. Traction validation. So what have you done so far? Who have you spoken to? What was the feedback? Do you have anyone signed up already? And then obviously funding requirements. What are you pitching for? Do you want to raise money? What are you raising that money for? So these would be sort of the key ingredients that I would always want to see, no matter what stage, depending on the business model or the sector, the order in which you sort of tell your story and the order which all this fit together. There's no one size fits all, and there's no good way of doing it. It really depends on what you're working on. I've got a question here around the difference between value proposition and proposed solution. So I want to understand what your solution is. So I'm going to do, here's the problem, and I'm going to create a software that is going to do X. But what I mean by value proposition is I know what it does, but I want to know how it achieves that. So how is it going to solve that problem specifically, and how is it better than anything else that's out there? So it's all about highlighting your key set, sort of unique features that mean that you are not just 10 times better, but 100 times better than what exists already. It really is about what makes you unique and what makes me want to buy you versus your competitor. That's what. That's how I would look at it. Because often people will tell you what the solution is. They will even give you nice little screenshots of what they're working on. They will even give you sort of a list of features that they're thinking about working on, but they will never actually, they will often fail to explain why that is better than what exists today. And that's actually what I'm more interested in. It's the how and the how you're going to get there and what makes you all that different. Sort of USP, someone just put in the chat, exactly. It's your unique USP, exactly. That's exactly another way of saying it. I missed out one important bucket from this list. Could anyone tell me what that might be? Ooh, someone got it straight away. Exactly, team. Team. So I left team out. And the reason why I did that is because what you'll find when you review a lot of decks is that people often forget the team, which is the most important thing. And it's so silly. It's just a wasted opportunity. But when you're at early stage, when you're an early stage startup, all you have is your team, and people often miss out describing what the team is. And by team, I don't just mean I need a team slide with photos and a few logos of where the team members have worked. I also want to understand who your supporters are. Do you have any advisors? Do you have any board members? And more importantly, I want to know whether you've identified gaps in the team and how you think about filling those gaps. Because obviously, even if it's a co-founding team of 2 or 3 people and there's sort of complementary skill sets, by definition there's going to be gaps that you will have to fill with a few first hires. But I want to understand whether you have the self-awareness to know what those first hires are, and that really is what differentiates a good versus a great team. What is, and I'm getting a question, what is the best pitch you've ever gone through? What stood out to me? I will save this question for a little bit later, if that's okay. I will sort of touch on that later, but it's a very good question. I will answer it in a few moments. So I guess just to sum it up, your job as a VC really is, when you're reviewing customers, when you're reviewing a pitch deck, is to make an assessment based on what you see. Again, more often than not, you won't actually have a lot of context. So you just have a pitch deck and you need to make a decision. Yes, pal, no pal, maybe pal. And it's never going to be a question of, oh, those guys did a really bad competition slide, therefore it's a no, or they forgot to, or the problem definition wasn't quite clear, so no pile. It's really, I guess, a list of things that you need to look out for that I just sort of touched on, the key things that you want to understand, and then you have to make an assessment whether overall there's enough ticks in the boxes, enough things that will make it an interesting enough opportunity. And I guess it's all about the overall risk profiles. If you know, even if the problem is great and it's a big enough problem that enough people will want to pay for to solve, because it's felt enough, even if the opportunity is big enough. If the team is trying to work on something they know nothing about and is not even relevant to what they're working on, it's just a really risky proposition, because you have no idea whether they can execute on something that they know nothing about. So it's really looking at a deck holistically in terms of how risky do I think this proposition is. And there's, when you make that investment decision, you'll think about, I guess, these sort of 3 different things: is product market fit, founder fit, VC fit. And these sort of buckets will be more or less important depending on what stage you're looking at. Obviously, product market fit will come later, because initially you don't know what you're doing and you're sort of experimenting, and there's a lot of back and forth and a lot of pivoting. But I guess what the most important thing is when you look at a deck is this team relevant to what they're building? So let's assume all those other boxes are ticks and it's a big enough problem, it's all those are there. Do I think that this is the right team to be working on this? Most important thing. And then obviously once they've had enough time to work on the problem, hopefully they will find product market fit, and they will sort of start making money at some point, and they have an idea of how they're going to get there. And then I guess VC fit is actually something that is probably one of the most important bits. I know I've got a couple of questions. I will get to those in a second, guys. The VC fit is something that I want to spend a little bit of time on. I think you might have gone through this in a previous session, so just wanted to touch upon it very quickly, because in reality, a lot of the decks that you will see as an investor won't actually fit the VC profile. And that's something that a lot of founders get very confused about. And I just realized I haven't. So the third bucket in the deep red. So often founders don't actually realize that they could probably build an amazing business and if solving a real problem, and they're gonna have a lot of customers, but it's just it's not a big enough opportunity for an investor to look at. And the reason being is that in addition to all the different elements that need to be there, it needs to be a large enough opportunity for a VC to invest in. And I guess just very briefly, it's just because of maths, because VCs will only be able to invest in companies that are economically viable. So if you think about a typical sort of early stage fund, which is roughly, let's assume £40 million, they will need to return a certain amount to their investors, let's assume over 2 times the money, so 100 million in sort of 10 years time. then I will need to make investments so that I actually can return that money to my investors, because as a fund manager, as a VC, that's my primary job, of returning money to my investors. And so if I invest, let's assume I've got £40 million to play with, I put 1 million per deal, I can do 40 investments, or let's assume 10% equity. Let's assume there's no follow-ons, so I just do 40 deals, 1 million each. In reality, most of those will fail. Let's assume 2 make it, and because they will have to raise follow-on funding, my equity stake, my original 10, if I don't top up the money, will reduce over time. I will actually need both of those exits to be over £1 billion so that I can return my fund. And therefore, if I actually don't think that the deck in front of me represents a big enough opportunity that could potentially, down the line, become a $1 billion business, I can't invest, because it's too much of a risk, and I need a few companies in my portfolio to return that amount of money, because that's my job as an investor, to, yes, invest in companies, but ultimately to give money back to my investors. And I'm going to stop there in case there's any questions about this, and then I have a few questions maybe they will answer. Alex asked about, for startups who will create new markets or new customer behavior, how to distinguish if it's nice to have or must have, but they just need a great product being loved by their customers. Very good question. It's that age-old question of, do customers actually know what they need, and do customers actually know whether they want it or really need it? It's a tricky question. I think it's really about willingness to pay. So are they happy to part with a certain amount of cash to get their hands on your product? And that's what it's really about. I guess it's not really about the judgment of must have versus nice to have. It's, are they willing to part with a serious amount of money to get their hands on a product? And sometimes it will be such a novel thing that it will take a while for you to get there, and it will only be sort of taken up by an early adopter group. But it's all about, again, it's back to the point of storytelling, of how you think about that thing taking off down the line. I don't know if that answers your question. I've got a few more here that I will answer. So curious about how you value a team of quite young people building a company who may not have the big logos you usually expect, since they are in their early careers. Do they still stand a chance? And if yes, what do exactly value in the team in that case? Good, very good question. Sometimes the team that you have in front of you, or indeed in the pitch deck that you are reviewing, is not a very seasoned team. They may not have a lot of experience, and as I say, may not have a lot of logos behind them. I think in that case, if you don't have the track record, what you can balance it out with as an entrepreneur is traction, right? So it's hustle. So if, let's say, we actually had an example recently of an entrepreneur that's never worked in fintech before, quite relatively young, has had some sort of leadership roles, but not what you would expect from a, I guess, typical founder, and has zero experience in fintech. And yet he was such an amazing hustler that he was able to get some really high profile advisors on board who really believed in what they were doing, who was super relevant to what he was building, and were very well established characters in that space. So I guess one way of sort of overcoming that is to have people surround you that know you much better than the investor that will just get the pitch deck well, and to show that actually people who really are relevant in that industry believe in what you're doing, because that tells me that you can A, get to the relevant context, and then B, that if the people that really know what you're working on inside out and they believe in what you're working on, then I should take another look. So I guess if you yourself don't have the credentials as an entrepreneur, then surrounding yourself by a team and a team of advisors can really show a lot. And in terms of traction, obviously, even if you're not experienced, if I can see that you've done a lot in a relatively short amount of time and you can show me that momentum, again, that can mitigate that risk. So in reality, a lot of questions or hesitations that I might have, you can answer in or attack in many different ways. But it's, again, back to my earlier point about an overall risk profile. I'm never going to get a perfect sort of 5 out of 5 on all the different things I look at in terms of competition, team. There's always going to be little gaps, and I'm always going to have little hesitations on lots of different things that I look at around your business. But it's overall, do I get the impression that you guys know what you're doing about, and you guys know exactly what you're doing as a team? And there's a lot of ways that you can sort of address those hesitations head on and show that you really know what you're talking about. And then I guess another one about the fund fund structure. What happens to the fund if they don't reach the expected return minimum? Well, then you as a VC are going to struggle to raise another fund. That's what tends to happen. And in reality, a lot of VC funds don't actually return the amount of money that they are supposed to. It's a really extremely risky business, especially early stage investing. Right. So keep the questions coming. I'll try and get to them as well as soon as possible. I guess in terms of just back to pitch decks, you would probably don't want to do more than you would want more than 15-20 slides, because again, you don't have a lot of time to read these decks as a founder, as an investor. And I guess one thing that I would highlight though is that you should be aware of biases that we all have. And I guess one of them is I guess something that gets talked a lot about these days, and rightly so, is warm introductions versus cold introductions. So I guess by definition, human beings just, it's all about trust. If I get a referral from a friend, I might look at that, or another sort of investor that I trust, I might look at that pitch deck more favorably than someone else, and I might sort of put aside my my clear views on things, and I might look at things more favorably than if it was just a deck that I just got through LinkedIn, for instance, because I don't know anything about that person, so I might be a bit more judgmental about the metrics and the different things that are missing. I think the tricky thing with this is that a lot of sort of founders that don't have access to some networks, or don't necessarily have sort of investors in their own networks, tend to I guess not start on the same foot, and therefore what I think VCs in general are trying to get better at, and something that definitely on top of my mind is trying to give opportunities to everyone, no matter where that introduction comes from, because you need to be conscious that a lot of people just might not have access to that person, and that doesn't make it a better or worse idea in terms of where it comes from. But I guess in terms of human nature, that's just how it is. And I guess as a final thing, before I don't know whether we're going to have enough time to actually look at a couple of examples, but instead of going through red flags, what I thought I'd sort of give you guys a quick green list of things that, rather than things that could go wrong, because in reality so many things that can go wrong, is really to give you a few pointers on what really makes a good deck stand out. And for me, it's really something that is concise, crisp, and to the point. And there's a lot of fluff, a lot of waffle that tends to hide a lot of things. And so actually really good decks tend to be very simple and very short, because the founders will have had enough time to really think about their business and to be able to distill what that chaos up in their mind is into such a way that you can digest it easily. And that's usually a very good telltale sign of how good and how well thought through that whole thing is, if the founders are able to deliver it in a very simple way. When the deck reads like a story, so I have one slide, one key message, I can go through it quickly, and it all makes sense, it flows, and that, yes, I have a lot of questions after, but it kind of makes sense. It's simple, clean visuals. I think now that there's a lot of sort of tools available that founders can take advantage of, and they give you ready-made templates. There's a danger of sort of looking at style over substance. I guess that's something important to bear in mind. But if it's it really can make and break a presentation if it's sort of too busy, a lot of text, not enough graphs and visuals, then it can be quite difficult to understand what the business proposition is. Consistency, you get an awful lot of decks with a lot of typos, which it doesn't bode well, and lots of different metrics dotted around the deck that refer to the same thing but defined differently, of all the different things. So consistency is key, because again, then I know that you've thought through stuff as an entrepreneur. It passes the MON test, i.e. it's not full of jargon, it's not trying to give you complexity, it's not trying to sort of give you a lot of complicated things so that it looks like it's complicated. Actually, the most elegant solutions are, you can explain in very simple terms. And so what I'm looking for is that even if I'm not an expert in, let's say, I just had a deck come through my door about serverless architecture. I'm no expert in this matter, but the way the founder was able to explain the problem and the proposed solution, I understood immediately and saw the potential and wanted to pick up the phone again. And I think something that is for me the most overlooked is this awareness of gaps and shortcomings. So you as an investor, when you look through that deck, you're not looking for all the answers. You're not expecting the founders to have everything worked out already, because that's in reality never going to be the case. It's a constant iteration of hypothesis, testing, iterations, going back and forth, adjusting as you go. But what I do want from the founders, and that really needs to come through the deck, is that awareness of where their gaps are and where the shortcomings are and what the risks are from their side, and what they are planning on doing to overcome those shortcomings. And so, yeah, having that self-awareness for me is key. And then I will open up to questions quickly, but I've got one more that I haven't answered that I said I would. Is what is the best pitch I've ever gone through, and specifically what stood out to you? That's a very good question. It's one that is very difficult to answer. I kind of wish I'd sort of counted how many entrepreneurs I met or how many pitch decks I reviewed over the years. It must be in the thousands. I think for me, again, my answer will vary whether it's in person or in a deck, but if it's sent through sort of digitally, whatever means, whether it's email or some sort of a document sending mechanism, I think having a very tailored short message to accompany a deck can be really powerful. And in terms of the deck, if I understand the three things that I mentioned, so problem, solution, and why the team, then I want to take a second look. But an actual pitch in person that I've seen, I think, again, it would be difficult to pick one, but for me, it's always, I really need to see the team dynamic, how the different co-founders interact, and sort of really want to always understand the story of the founders. Why are they working on this? What got them interested in this in the first place, and what gets them excited, and what gets them jump out of bed in the morning? Because you'll often meet entrepreneurs who are blinded by the glamour that a TechCrunch article might bring, when you've raised a bit of funding and you know, it's really cool to be an entrepreneur, but actually it's really tough. And there are more tough days than good ones. And so that sort of passion and that real understanding of what ultimately drives those entrepreneurs for me is always the best one. And if that comes through and I get to see with every point, whether it's market, competition, traction, all the things that I mentioned, if I see how the team is relevant to all of those points, I think that's what really makes it for me. If yes, we know there's competition, but you know, my advisor, my sort of CTO worked at this company and knows these things, so all these different things. That would be. Any other questions, guys? Feel free to jump in with any questions that you may have around how to think about reviewing decks, or anything else related to sort of early stage investing. I specifically didn't, I guess one question that you might ask is, why don't I have examples of what a good pitch deck looks like? I think, you know, there's a lot of resources available online. I can actually share some links with Julie afterwards if you guys are interested. Sort of a few websites where they go through decks of really successful startups, which I thought I could do today, just a couple, but unfortunately we won't have time. It could be, it is sometimes very interesting to see what, you know, an early deck of Airbnb or Revolut looks like, but in reality a lot of the decks are actually really terrible, and you probably wouldn't even look twice. And I guess one thing to bear in mind, and the reason is that a pitch deck is never just a pitch deck, right? It's just one data point. And so even though the Airbnb deck wasn't that great, the initial one that you might see online, obviously the founders were super relevant. They had the right connections at the right timings, a lot of things that provided that meant that it got to where I got to, but it wasn't just on the pitch deck. But I will share a few links where you can take a look at some examples and you can make your judgment call whether you think it's good and whether you would have invested if it was you reviewing it at the very beginning. And I must admit, most of those decks I wouldn't have taken a second look at. I would have missed out. Any other questions, guys? Feel free to jump in. Anything at all? No, I think, Julia, this might, unless there's any other questions. Do I have one? Oh, I have a question. Got one about what is the ratio of pitch deck looked at to follow-up meetings to investments? Very good question. It will depend on which fund you work for, what stage, I suppose, and how the particular fund in question gets their deal flow. Often, you know, some operate whereby they don't take warm introductions for the reason I mentioned. They you can only apply through the website, and they make sure that they look at absolutely everything that they get. Some, you know, only work with warm introductions, but in reality you'll get thousands and thousands. If you think about it, even most active VCs will only really make a handful of investments a year. Yes, Antler, we are super active, so we'll probably make 20 to 30 a year, but per fund, but most VCs won't do more than a dozen, and so you really should go from 1,000 to, you know, half a dozen max. So the odds are really low of actually getting a meeting. So what they really should make sure is that the initial deck sparks enough of an interest for me to want to spend more time. But it's an interesting question. And then I got another one on Antler. Someone's asking whether I have any advice on applying on the investment side. Yes. So all are obviously, if you want to apply as a founder or as a team member, all the sort of open jobs are on the website. So if you go to our careers page, then you'll see any available sort of roles, not just in the UK, but globally. We always have things coming up on the investment side as well. So do keep an eye out on sort of our LinkedIn page and careers page. So that would be my first port of call. Any final questions? If not, if you don't want to ask your question now, I'm happy to take any questions offline as well. So just don't hesitate to get in touch via LinkedIn, and we'll hopefully be able to answer your questions.
Thanks so much, Veronica. And thank you. Yeah, we'll share the examples of online decks as well to have a look at, because do take a look. Yeah, it is actually always really interesting to see the risk. On the flip side, someone also shared the Fire Festival deck a few years ago, which was excellent, and absolutely everyone probably would have invested it from that. So do always kind of bear in mind that there's a few different versions. Fire Festival, there was a lot more going on than just the deck, but it's always really interesting to look at these examples. So we'll put all that on Notion, as with the slides, and link to LinkedIn, and we'll give you can find the Antler website as well. We do sometimes have a few of those roles on the Future VC website too, if they're relevant. But yeah, thank you again, and thanks everyone for joining, and I will see you tomorrow lunchtime to learn about raising a Series A. See you all soon. Bye.
Thank you all. Bye.